Hello, my name is ScienceBeard and I'm not getting on top of things. 2 weeks again. But hey ho, that's life. I will go through Peter's latest column and only discuss from his previous week's column what conservative Christians apparently like to do. In his column of the 12th of September, Peter writes in defense of not extraditing Julian Assange of WikiLeaks fame. Peter says that he doesn't like Julian, but that's more about the stunt Julian has on marijuana. More on that later. For now, I will just summarize that Peter thinks that our own judiciary in the UK is weak and pathetic, and that the US judiciary is even weaker and has decayed much more so than even the UK's. Now, one thing I will say is that there are indeed murky things going on in the US, but as you get older you tend to remember more stuff, and you notice more things in law with which you are unhappy. So is it a fair comment, or is Peter maybe talking of an accumulation of decisions he's not in favor of over the course of his time? Who knows? I'm not speaking for Peter, just positing a possibility here. Anyway, Peter is against letting the US have Julian, because he thinks that he won't get a fair hearing. But how do you know until it happens? So he says, the prevention of these things is not some wild revolutionary cause. It is the duty of Christians and conservatives to oppose such wrongs as much as it is the duty of anybody, if not more so. So as I don't fit the Christian category, nor the conservative, I should be fighting your side of the case. Why? And why more so? Peter, follow the advice I give to my students. Read out your script and see whether it makes sense. Mr. Assange is not a terrorist, a spy or a killer. The idea that he should face the strong possibility of being entombed alongside terrorist killers does not really meet any test of justice. This from Peter, who believes in the Christian God, who killed almost all life on earth, killed firstborns, punished people who were led by the wrong person, and commits people to an eternity in hell if they don't believe in him. Thank God the Christian God is fictional. Let's continue with Peter's column from the 12th of September. So here we go. The government is wading into the swamp of despotism, one muzzle at a time. I preferred face nappies to muzzle, since face masks are not effective muzzles. They do not appear to shut up people like, well, Peter. But then of course he's not wearing one. The government has no legal right to impose the severe and miserable restrictions on our lives with which it has wrecked the economy, brought needless grief to the bereaved and the lonely, and destroyed our personal liberty. The first sentence should equally be applied to Brexit, and there is a much more persuasive case, I feel, but I will leave that alone, because it hasn't happened yet, and much in the same way that there has been no destruction of our personal liberty. When you send a naughty child like Peter to their room, you do not destroy their human rights and liberty forever. It's temporary. He then quotes Lord Sumption, who says, I don't myself believe that the Act confers on the government the powers that it has purported to exercise. The Act is the Public Health Act of 1984, and in the quote Lord Sumption expresses an opinion. I will take for granted that he is a legal expert. But here are the two things which follow which make Peter sound a bit, well, arrogant. And I know I am in no shit Sherlock territory here. The first is that Peter asserts, English law just does not allow an Act of Parliament to be stretched so far. At a time when an Act of Parliament, namely the referendum in 2016, means that we are not only committing an act of abhorrent self-harm, including a no-deal Brexit, based on the simplest of questions, which I think is stretching the results of a non-binding poll far further than sensible precautions against the spread of a deadly infection, we are also about to make a law which breaks an international treaty. As an aside, Brandon Lewis, I don't think, was supposed to say that out loud, but he did. The second thing is this. Lord Sumption's intervention is of course so huge and important that the media of this country have somehow not noticed it. So as has been the case from the start, you have to get it from me. Peter thinks that somehow he is the arbiter of truth. Bless. Now, I'm not saying he doesn't have sway with some Daily Mail readers, and here, by the way, I remember an early comment some weeks ago to which I now think I have the perfect comeback. The commenter on my video said that Peter had more intellect in his little finger than the whole of me, or words to that effect. The reason why it took me so long is that I didn't really know who Peter was. And now I do. He is, in fact, Christopher Hitchens' rather less talented brother. So my comeback should have been, you are thinking of the wrong Hitchens. But there we go. I still like Peter. He's just such a flabby target you can't miss him. And then he talks about how there is a mayor in Melbourne and some anti-mask protester was forced to wear a mask. You know, because masks don't do anything other than protect key workers such as the police, who were at the protest, watching people literally breaking the law. Does Peter know that the law should be obeyed even if you don't like it? I mean, I think I can drive safely on the motorway at speeds up to and including 100 miles per hour, because I did it in Germany. But I would still be okay with getting fined in the UK for breaking the speed limit, because, you know, that's the law. If US police forced handcuffed left-wing protesters to wear Trumpoid Make America Great Again baseball caps, it would be about the same. Well, no, because baseball caps are not PPE. They don't protect anyone. But what does happen in the US is that the Department of Homeland Security takes people away in unmarked cars, where the security forces don't identify themselves. So... And then he's back onto marijuana. Peter says it's a scourge, it ruins lives, etc. In a previous column he said that if only people listened to him, they would now know that cannabis is as awful as he knew it was decades ago. Sounds like he had a bad experience. So yes, apparently nobody knew how bad marijuana can be. Is that why it is illegal now? Because of Peter? No, of course not. Peter was just kidding, right? It has been illegal for a very long time now. And then he says this about the potential for marijuana's medicinal use for some patients suffering from specific diseases or conditions. Legalizers have long privately admitted these claims are a red herring to give pot a good name. How can something which makes many of its users mentally ill be a medicine? But lo, police chiefs are backing a new cannabis card that will provide de facto decriminalization of the drug for millions of people with health conditions. Officers who have already almost given up arresting people for possession say it will give them a new excuse for failing to enforce the law. Wow. Firstly, isn't it convenient that legalizers, whoever they are, admit to Peter behind closed doors that they are lying to the public? Yeah, I buy that, of course. People who suffer from certain cancers and other diseases and conditions are swearing by marijuana, and many of those people are not your normal dopeheads. They don't use it for fun, but because it alleviates pain or whatever symptom their disease confronts them with, and makes their lives worth living. Sometimes there is a trade-off, such as lithium toxicity for lithium, for those patients who suffer from severe depression, such as Bill Oddie. That doesn't make Bill a dopehead either, and lithium definitely has an impact on mental health. Do we know precisely how all the medication works? As a scientist, I would like to say yes here, but the answer is unfortunately no, because biology, turns out, is complicated. And here's the other thing. Should possession be a criminal offence? If so, why don't Oxbridge students have loads of convictions? I know it's not limited to Oxbridge, but I have to spell it out for Peter's fans. Could it be that possession is more likely to be found where there are minorities and poor people, because that's where the police look? And then he basically denies COVID is a thing and everything is fine, and I'm not going to debunk his unscientific ass by pointing out that deaths lag cases and what exponential growth is, and that while young people haven't died in droves, they can still carry and spread the virus, which can then kill their grandparents, teachers and others. What I want to point out is this bit, which is his conclusion and urges you to ask questions, which is fine. Good. For until you do and demand truthful explanations of why your children's education has been ruined, why legions of people will lose their jobs, why daily life is an intensifying misery of jobs worth and bureaucracy, and why hundreds of businesses built up with years of sweat and risk are now dying, you will just get more lies. Have children's education been ruined though? Does mean staying away from school for half a year, let's say, that the education is ruined? If so, why is he not all about making state schools better, giving more money to education, closing the gap between public and private schools? We have the youngest teachers in the UK of all OECD nations. Good, isn't it? Well, what about teachers leaving the profession? Many have gone overseas. A lot of experience has been lost. The system is also propped up by low salaries for young teachers. And they don't stay very long. And here is my second question. If capitalism is the greatest economic system, why can't we take a year off? If we are so rich, then why can't we stay away from work for a few months? Why is capitalism so fragile? And with those questions, I will leave you until the next time. Bye.